Morrow will be our guest speaker. The presentation is titled, believe it or not, Welcome to World War III. I didn't know about that. Joe will present evidence suggesting that we are already into World War III, even though many people are not aware of it. Going directly to his background, prior to moving to Laguna Woods, Joe served over 30 years with the U.S. Navy. He was as a commander of naval officer in 1983. He graduated from mechanical engineering from the Florida Institute of Technology and served in many areas of the world. So instead of going through all that and wasting time, let's hear Joe.
Thank you all for coming out. I see we got some bocce people here, we got some dance club people here, we got some new faces and a lot of patriots that have been up close in the battle for a long time. So really appreciate everybody coming out. My job is to make it worth your time for the next 45 minutes or so. Hopefully you get some value out of this. We'll get right into it. So here's our goals. Consider that we're already in World War III, as we said, and if you read the flyers, there were 5 questions. Who's at war? What are they fighting about? Who's going to win? We're going to answer all of those as we get into it. And then another thing is this war isn't like anything we've seen before. It's not, the front lines aren't over on the other side of the world somewhere. We're all engaged in this, and us and our families are all vulnerable to it as well. So we'll touch on that a little bit. And then mainly relax. I know, politics are insane right now. There's a lot of strong opinions on different issues, but I'm not trying to sell you anything or convince you to believe what I believe. We all have different points of view, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So I won't be offended if you totally disagree with what I have, and that's all acceptable. Okay, so kind of standard format, introduction, a couple stage-setting thoughts that I'd like to share with you. And then we'll look briefly at past wars, a perspective on that, a couple nuggets that maybe carry through. And then what is this World War III I'm thinking about? And then we'll do some assessment and a couple thoughts about what we should do after we leave the room. So introduction, as I touched on, it's really important. If you look at a cylinder and you only see it from one angle, you would say that's a circle over there. And if you go 90 degrees over and look at it, it looks like a square. And reality is, neither of those are correct. It's a cylinder, not a flat object. So depending on your point of view, you can see things very differently. Pat mentioned how strong our Democrat friends are over here. They see the world very differently than us. It's hard to understand, but to me, they watch TV, and if you look at TV, which tells you, listen to what we say and don't look from any other angle, otherwise you're a terrorist, they're going to see the world very different than us. Anybody recognize that guy on the left? That's Curtis in the astronomy club. No, I'm just kidding. That's our friend Galileo, who had some observation. He looked at the world, and he said that big fireball that goes up around us every day and moves across the sky, that's not moving. We're the ones that are moving. So he was ridiculed, laughed at, persecuted, attacked. It was insane to think that was the truth, because everybody's point of view was that we're standing here and that thing's going by us. That guy must be crazy. But he changed the world, of course, and we're seeing everything much differently. And now, I don't know if there's any flat earthers in here, but there's probably a few hangers on. Okay, and coming to current time, to me, in 2015, when Trump ran for office and was on the stage with like 18 other candidates, and he said, you know what, that war in Iraq, that was all BS. You guys lied about it. You told us bad information and you lied about it. To me, the world completely changed as much as Galileo. He told Americans and the whole world, our government that we thought we were paying to protect us and keep us safe are the ones lying to us and getting us in trouble. That was as big as Galileo, changing our point of view. And we're in that process of upheaval right now, trying to process what the heck's going on. So a little bit, I guess, from my point of view, my priority is my family. I have 3 beautiful kids in their 30s, and And then actually, I got to admit, astronomy is crazier than politics. If you look at what's going on off the planet right now, it's that's an interest to me. I've been the president of the astronomy club for 4 years, and as far as my time management, it's kind of in this order. But on
Politics.
excuse me, is it the volume sound okay?
Yeah.
Pretty good. About 4 years ago, Catherine, Valerie, a few others in the room probably stood up when they were telling us, hey, you can't go to your clubhouse unless you're injected properly. And we were in shock. We were in shock, the people in New Zealand were in shock, the people in Iceland were in shock, and all 220 countries in between were in shock, telling us you're not safe and you don't love your family unless you get injected with whatever we say. That's what I'm talking about. We're on the front line of this war. That's probably number one. But as Catherine said, people got active. We did a lot of things, and I think it feel good that we're all able to assemble without the government injection in this. And then as far as the Tea Party, actually when Bob asked me to speak, I thought this was the third time. It's actually the fourth time. I did one in 22 about false flags, 3 steps to restoring liberty in America, and then what was really happening at the border. That again, like the opening slide of Hollywood, they make movies, they also manufacture reality, and they tell us stories that are completely fabricated, funded, and implemented in an artificial way, which includes our border, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And then I took, if you've been to those other ones, I took a little bit of information from those and rolled it into what we're going to talk about tonight. 2 other things going forward, though. I'm also involved with a group called the Speaker's Corner. If you're interested in who's going to be governor on November 19, 7 of the declared candidates are going to come and debate. California is a $4 trillion economy, and this group out in town in Laguna Hills has 7 of them lined up to come speak to us, which is pretty impressive. Actually, that's a small group. They get less people than in this room. But if you're interested in that, that's an opportunity. And then, Pat, I don't think you mentioned it, but you're going to try and mobilize to the Board of Supervisors to revoke the Voters' Choice Act. And we don't have time tonight. I'm going to roll through this stuff and try and get it done within half an hour, because Rosalind has to leave at 8, so I have to be done by 8 o'clock.
I sent an email to Robert and Kathy to send it out about it.
Yeah, and we won't get in, but that Voters' Choice Act, that was part of the COVID/election rig. Masterful plan that gave authority to every county in the country, signed a document saying, if there happened to be some unusual event in the future, you can do A, B, and C, and put up mailbox drop boxes all over for weeks and unsupervised. And the whole scam ran off of that. And Orange County, to this day, still is doing their elections under that legislation or that past governance. So that needs to be revoked for sure. We need to go back to one-day voting on paper. They locally count it. And no globalist can play with the numbers and manipulate it and ship ballots from China and throw them in there for Biden and all that crap that happened in 2020. So that's an opportunity too, if anybody's up for it. And then, not to belabor too much, but basically your sources matter, as we said with that cylinder. Where are you getting your information from? On the left are some sources that I generally peruse and find very credible. A lot of them were ex-mainstream media, big names like Tucker Carlson, that was their most profitable spokesperson, #1 show in the country. He said the wrong thing one weekend. They fired him, wanted to banish him into the wilderness for 40 years. Although he dusted himself off, and his audience now is 100 times bigger than it was. So that's a huge dynamic going on. And of course, Elon Musk, our man, got in and saved X. When it was Twitter, they banned the President of the United States from posting text to us to communicate with the people. That's the kind of tyranny that we're living under and are fighting. Okay, now a couple thoughts. We're going to talk about World War III and a couple other wars. A key point is, if you look at history, I won't go into detail, but basically whoever had the best weapons gets to be in charge. And there, you could follow that through 1,000 years of that. Today, the best weapons are information, DNA, biological is a frontier, directed energy, and then hypersonic missiles. In the balance of power we'll be talking about, the the new emerging powers. This is Tel Aviv during the 12-day war. These are dozens of intercept missiles going up trying to implement the Iron Dome and these other layers of defense. And this line right here is a hypersonic missile coming in and hitting the target that it's just programmed to hit, which included Mossad headquarters, IDF headquarters, other air bases. They were getting smacked hard. That war, we could talk an hour about that, but basically, Israel attacked Iran. They wanted to decapitate the leadership, killed a lot of people and their families. We'll hold questions till the end.
No, sorry, I think it's a little loud.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's just me.
Little loud? Okay. Thank you. But yeah, let me run through these slides, and then I really look forward to other people's perspective on things. And we can discuss this 12-day war a lot, but it was supposed to decapitate Iran. And after they did the first hit, they sent texts and emails to thousands of other leaders saying, you need to come out and publicly denounce the regime or your family's next. But apparently nobody took the bait, and then they dusted themselves off and they had a retaliatory strike. That, if you remember, Trump was talked into attacking Iran and hit the nuclear sites on the 22nd. On the 23rd of June, Iran hit our Doha #1 base in the Middle East with significant punishment, although there was communication that nobody was killed, but they took out a lot of infrastructure. And then the next day, the ceasefire happened. That ceasefire, in my opinion, was driven more by the West than Iran. Trump had to come out and publicly say that it's fine for Iran to sell China as much oil as they want, and we're not going to interfere with that process. So again, it's a crazy world. Nobody has all the facts. There's a lot of cover-up. There's a lot of deception. But this is the front line of a lot of this stuff. Okay, another thing on war is deception, which I already hit on. It's in our DNA. People deceive each other every day at every level, from personal relationships to businesses to corporations to governments, as we talked about. Of course, can't have to put a little Tea Party in there since we're in the Tea Party Club. This place was founded with the deception of when they took on the British powers, of course, they dressed up as Native Americans to throw them off. You all know that story. And then today it's Fast and Furious. The false flags, the hitting one country A and saying the country B did it. And then how about the bats in the wet market? When the COVID came out, we were told on every channel every day there was bats in the wet market. This mysterious virus showed up. And if anybody questioned that, you don't love your family and you were a domestic terrorist. And they drilled that hard. Today, I don't think anybody believes that story, but that's the level of deception, not on a war front with false battle tanks or dummy drones, but the information that they're feeding to the American people. Pretty crazy stuff. That's in the front line, and we're all on it. Also, war is expanded on that a little bit. It's not just kinetic, it's also political in the sense of information and propaganda and censorship. When the guys come out and say, you got to look at it this way and you're not allowed to question this. This is a circle and that's it. That's all you need to know. That's when you need to really have your radar go up. And then financially, of course, a lot of things happen for power and influence. And then for finishing the intro section, this is the executive summary. That, in my opinion, the European powers have been running the world ever since Christopher Columbus landed over here. About 500 years, they've had the best ships, the best weapons, the best lines of communication, and it hasn't been clean, but almost every dotted line on the country of what is a country was decided in between France, England, and Germany. So, and on top of all that, you have a banking architecture, the money people, that told the UK when China asked to stop bringing opium to their shores, they showed up with ships and bombarded and went to war 2 times for them in the opium wars to make sure that financial / economic / power kept flowing correctly. So these guys have some legitimate concerns about not being happy with these people in charge at this point. So that's what that's kind of the genesis. We'll look at a lot of details, but this is the big picture. The old money from the West is now being seriously challenged by a new structure of power, including finance in the East. So past wars, my view is the 1900s, prior to that somewhat, we were villages and towns and small fiefdoms or kingdoms, but things were very much regional, and the local guys with the most power were in charge. But as we started to, the world became more interconnected, there were kind of three philosophies: communism, fascism, and capitalism, which each sounds good on paper, but sounds terrible in the real world. But they fought each other. Basically, the two of them fought the fascists in 2 world wars for 45 years. So by 1945, the fascist philosophy was pretty much wiped out, and then we had the Cold War with the capitalism versus communism. The Soviet Union was the bloc of communism, and remember the Iron Curtain and all that stuff. And we'll look at that a little closer. But then basically by 1990, the West won, the Soviet Union collapsed, and then we had a unipolar world. From 1990, America and the Western powers were the sole powers of the world. Nobody could challenge us, not even close. So World War I, a couple quick ones that I think are relevant to that whole event, is 1913 when the Federal Reserve was established. If you see right here, that's a mask. This was a Rothschild originally founded banking cartel that ran all of Europe and managed to expand into the United States, and they didn't say, hey, let us print your money for you and charge your interest. We're the Rothschild cartel. They went down to Jekyll Island and made a plan to create the Federal Reserve System, including the IRS and FBI. And this guy, G.E. Griffin, if you want to know more about all of this guy lives right up in Santa Barbara and wrote a really good book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. And that's a big part of the problem. Because a few years later, when they were bogged down in the war, they went to the UK and had the Balfour. How many have heard of the Balfour Declaration? Okay, some. So it was signed saying, and this is current, right up to current day, this is in the mix of things. Basically, they pledged to the Rothschild, Lord Rothschild, the king is happy to let you know that we support the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. And by the way, it's understood that you won't disturb the culture or civil rights of anybody that's already there. And that's been in the mix of all international politics, of course, as I'm sure you're all aware. But there's a lot of suggestion that they got that signed because England was getting bogged down in the war. The World War I was atrocious, but they committed to get the United States to get involved, and you guys are going to win this war. We're going to put an end to it if you sign this document for us. And then at the end of the war, of course, the Treaty of Versailles, the West won, but that had very draconian restrictions and burden on the German people for decades to come, which kind of, I'm sure you heard in history class even, that World War II was started because of the Treaty of Versailles in World War I. And now jumping ahead to World War II, most people are taught it started in 1939. 1933, and again, the bankers hijack governments, they hijack corporations, and they hijack religions, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, or the Muslim faith. They've all been brutalized by these people for them to just amass more power. And whatever story they can sell to do that, they're going to do it. So war was declared in 1933. Germany started, and that's when Antifa was created too. The Jamokes up in Portland and Seattle and Chicago and Wisconsin, Antifa fighters, those guys got their start back here. And so there's a lot of threads of connectivity. And it wasn't a battle of kinetic war, but the financial and the political war was fast and furious, running hard all through the 30s here. And then same thing in 39 when Germany went into Poland. It was like, oh, this crazy maniac just attacked for no reason. And you know what? That sounds a lot like the narrative when Putin went into Ukraine. That crazy man, every station told us, totally unprovoked. Those were the two words you had to say whenever you talked about there's a conflict in Ukraine. He went in there totally unprovoked. But I don't know how many know that the West overthrew Ukraine in 2014, appointed the Biden family to board positions, the Mitt Romney family. We went in there and started financially and politically running that. And that same year, in Odessa, has anybody heard of the massacre in Odessa? They locked dozens of ethnic Russians in a Union Tower and then set the building on fire and listened to them all burn to a crisp. So Putin was concerned. He was in Sochi at that time, hosting the Winter Olympics, when Victoria Nuland and the cabal went in there and took over Ukraine and started running it hard with the Azov Nazis from 2014. So I'm amazed he waited 8 years before he went in and did something about it myself. I'm sure some people differ on that assessment, but another key thing about World War II, we won that from our industrial might. Anybody know the acronyms FUBAR and what's the other one? Couple. Now, we weren't the best in logistics or warfighting, but we had the industrial might. Rosie the Riveter. We were building ships 1 a day, airplanes 100 a day. We were feeding England, France, the Far East with the Russians, and ourselves. That's how we won the war. We outproduced them. So it's relevant to today, too, of what we're going to talk about in World War III. Okay, so hello. That takes us up to the Cold War. And I'm going to accelerate a little bit, and then if you have any questions, please keep trying to remember them, and then we can talk afterward, too. But when the Cold War started, we stood up the Central Intelligence Agency in 1947. Our Congress understood these guys are going to go out and manipulate newspapers, manipulate trade unions, put in puppets to run countries for us so we can harvest whatever we want from them. So they implemented the Smith-Mundt Act that said, okay, you want to go do some bad shit for us, but you can't do it on American soil and you can't propagandize the American people. That generally held pretty well until it was repealed under the Obama regime to say, no, that's okay, you can do that to Americans as well. And we're under that now. They're trying to revisit that. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene and others are trying to restore that to end all this propaganda that we've been subjected to. And then, of course, NATO was created, which was the fighting force to defend against the Soviet Union, the communists. And part of that was terrorism, Operation Gladio, mostly in Italy. I don't know if you heard about that, but they would blow up buildings, kill innocent people, and say those damn commies did it. We got to go to war with them. And those guys had free reign for a long time, for 50 years, but now in a way, we built this attack dog, and now they've turned around. They're basically the deep core, the deep state of who we're dealing with, that are doing things like the Las Vegas shooting and saying, oh no, it's just one guy up there, he's dead, so now nothing to see. Like total propaganda and violence on our own soil like we've never seen before. Okay, so that's background. Now we'll get into the World War III assessment, or thesis that we're in World War III. When did this war start? In my opinion, it started in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed, and these guys were rudderless with no leadership, and Russia's sitting right there. Russia is the biggest country in the world by mass. They cover 11 time zones with vast resources. Not just oil, but diamonds, other precious minerals, the arable land. So that immediately was a big target of opportunity. Let's go in there, break that place up, and then we start running it. Okay, and then another element was the NATO was created to defend against the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union collapsed, you could have said, okay, mission accomplished, we can all stand down. Ship pulls back into port, liberty call. They didn't do that. They went the opposite way. Gorbachev apparently agreed to resign from Prime Minister or Premier of the Soviet Union and end it all with the understanding that NATO wouldn't expand 1 inch to the east. And that not only did they expand 1 inch, but they've been capturing countries. Turkey was already a member, but all of these were new countries, the Baltic states, Finland, just recently joined last year, but they've been pushing hard to build their power base. That's why Putin is unhappy with, of course, what's happening, because now since for the last 10 years, they've been going very hard to capture Ukraine. The thing with NATO too, and a lot of other entities, that's a business model. If you get a country to join your club, okay, you're going to buy your walkie-talkies from this guy, you're going to buy your tanks from this guy. It's a power-based expansion, financially, technically, economically. You have a captured customer. They have to be able to fight with your guys, so they all have to have interchangeable equipment, and you become powerful in multiple ways, even short of a war. So at the same time, in 1990, there's a lot of evidence on Wall Street that they floated billions of dollars to show up in Russia and say that Yeltsin, hey, we're the smart guys in the West that know how to keep everybody happy and get things done. We'll come show you guys what to do. They bought up the railroads, the shipbuilding, the infrastructure, and then they dismantled it and collapsed it all through the 90s. Russia used to put out 12 million barrels of oil a day. It went down to almost 5 million, more than 50% cut through the 90s. It was a Trojan horse approach until Putin got in around 2000 and started being able to turn things around. Okay, so who are the major combatants? It's the BIS versus the BRICS. I think most people have probably heard of the BRICS, a new financial architecture from the East. BIS is the Bank for International Settlements. They're the top dog in the West for financial institutions. And as I mentioned, nations, corporations, religions, these guys just see all of that as pawns on a chessboard to be manipulated for their desired end. And we've been abused heavily by both sides. We'll touch on a couple things on that too. Here, looking a little closer, here's the BIS. Their headquarters is in Basel, Switzerland. They're called the central bank of central banks. They're the ones that make the big transactions happen and oversee all the other central banks in the West. You could call them the New World Order, Illuminati if you want, or a dozen other names, but the reality on the ground financially is right there in that building. And over 200 countries rely on their software, the SWIFT, to do 44 million transactions a day happen with international trade. They basically had a monopoly on international trade. That's why they could say, country X, we don't like what you're doing, we're going to sanction you and shut you off from the rest of the world. Like Iraq in the 1990s, we paid Saddam to go invade Iran and kill a couple million people. Afterward, he wasn't towing the line, so we sanctioned that country. They think millions of children died in Iraq through the 1990s because of what these guys were up to. Their thirst for more power. On the other side, you have the BRICS. It was just BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And then shortly after, pretty much close to the foundation, South Africa joined. So BRICS was the common terminology since 2009, established at a conference in Russia. This is the other side of World War III. And if you see here on this diagram, it now reflects more than half of the world population and over half of the world economy. So they're a serious challenge to the power base that have been running things for 500 years. What are they fighting about? The old school is fighting for world domination. They want to hold on to their power. They had everything sealed up. Like I said, from New Zealand to Iceland, everybody had to play their game and do their story. And when it was time for war, we went to war. And you have to support the troops, get your bumper sticker, don't ask questions. These are the masters of doing that. That's their game. And this game, we'll talk a little more about their tactics of propaganda, not direct warfare, but the COVID we touched on, but ISIS and climate change are all manufactured and nurtured and nested out here. These guys are the ones they've been smacking around and taking down, like Gaddafi in Libya. He wanted his own currency and wanted to trade in the African continent without these guys controlling it. So of course we got told the story, this is an evil dictator, we got to go bring liberty to those people and free them. They're living in the Stone Age now with drugs, slavery, sex trade, brutal violence. If you look at Libya if you want to know a little about the way these guys operate. So these guys have a business model, and they have online stuff, and they're kind of similar. That these are the top of the food chain, but they have the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the Federal Reserve. They have dozens of sub-agencies that feed up in the system, and the BRICS are developing that too. They have cultural interchange initiatives going on, and they're basically modeling themselves a little bit for a global influence, and really standing up. We're not going to take on the bankers, but these guys have a shot at it. I mentioned, mentioned these other ones. These, in my opinion, yeah, we need to take care of the planet. They know 99% of people feel that way. All right, how do we exploit that sense of feeling and make the whole world, like Joe Biden signed, give us 15% of every corporation profit so that we can keep the planet healthy? That's a world domination strategy, just like COVID and the terrorist vaccine passports. 9/11 was an element. I won't go into this much, but this was another one of the BIS scams. But why these guys are fearful too is not only do they have Russia, China, and Iran and others joining forces for physical unity over there, but a lot of Americans like Kirk Weldon, a firefighter, ex-congressman, and Tucker Carlson are talking about we need to find out what really happened in this scenario, and that's active right now. So in my opinion, the Epstein situation and 9/11, if those things come to light, basically the base that the bankers been riding on for years, we've been their workhorse for years. We're about to throw them off. The COVID we mentioned, this guy, James O'Keefe on the right there, he's done great work with Project Veritas. He got this top executive at Pfizer to admit that their business plan was to make a new strain of COVID every quarter so that everybody's got to get another shot in their arm. How's that sound? Here's another one of theirs that I believe anyway. The intent in Butler, Pennsylvania last July 13 was to blow Trump's head off, tell us that Iran did it. We have absolutely proof that Iran did it. So now we need to unify and go get those 90 million people and teach them to heal. But this picture, you can see the bullet flying by right here. No camera or even a typical high-speed camera can see a bullet flying by. But this guy was able to do it because he was tasked from the New York Times to go there and stand in front of Trump, film his head with an 8,000 frame per second camera, when they typically never even covered Trump rallies. This was during the election last year before he was voted in. They never even put it on the air, but on this day, they all were there. That kid, Thomas Crooks, he had drone surveillance of the site in the morning before the rally started, and the FBI, the Secret Service, directed the county sheriff department not to fly any drones. So the good guys to protect the president weren't allowed to use their drones, yet this kid that supposedly tried to shoot his head off used drones. He had multiple cell phones back to numbers in Ukraine, running the whole scenario, and we get none of this truth on mainstream media. But I don't know how this will play out. Hopefully that's on the list of things to do for getting the real criminals that we're dealing with. One contrast, just recently, India's buying oil from Russia now. We slapped 50% sanctions on all their exports to the U.S. because we're telling them we don't like who you're getting your oil from. While at the same time, a couple weeks ago, Putin hosted a Liberation Day for India, over 2 million participants on a 3-day weekend celebrating Indian culture and value and contribution to society. So if you're Modi, who would you want to hang out with? Okay, so who's going to win this war, though? I think we're hopefully defined who they are, and then what's going to happen. Where are we at? These guys are losing their base quickly, including us. There's upheaval in the West. People are not happy with who's been running the world for us lately. A lot of people see them as treacherous warmongers that actually love death and destruction. It's in their business plan. These guys are rapidly growing. Beijing, these guys run the scenario, divide and conquer. They want the blacks killing the whites, they want the Christians killing the Muslims, and they want the Shiite killing the Sunnis, and they want the Arabs killing the Persians. The big divide between Iran and Saudi Arabia that was heavily worked to have a conflict and get these 1.7 billion Muslims to start killing each other as quick as we can. China hosted a conference in Beijing, I think a couple years ago now, but they've had a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia and Iran. They both opened embassies in each other's country. They're doing free trade, and beyond that, they're doing joint military operations through the Persian Gulf, which is where I used to patrol in the 80s. The West used to own all that waterway heavily, and now China's over there on both sides. China's in the Mediterranean and working with Egypt and Turkey, and they're working over here. So a lot of dynamics, but if we look at, this is our best fighter plane on the planet, the F-35. China has this airborne and operational J-36, a full generation ahead. It has a lower radar signature. It goes Mach 3. It carries a hypersonic arsenal that can go plane to plane, plane to ship, or plane to earth. We have nothing that can defend against this. They build it 100% within the borders of China. For the F-35 to get up in the air, we have to buy over 35 different subcontractors from China to make this work. It's like when COVID hit and we couldn't even distribute face masks. We had to beg China to send us some. Really dangerous times, and we're all on the front line. Here's their recent parades. 4th of July in America, September 3rd in China. See any difference there? And this is cosmetic or superficial. You can say, who cares how well people can march, but that reflects on how well they do maintenance on their equipment, how well they train to steer their equipment and fight their equipment. You need fighters. This is a fighting force right here. These guys are out of step, looking around, hardly know, probably thinking about what they're going to have for lunch. And if you haven't seen the parade, this is just the marching guys. It's comprehensive, from Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, to unmanned drones, to hypersonic missiles, to advanced nuclear warfare that we don't have equivalents of, to the information warfare. They know the full spectrum of warfare, and it was on full display how they're ready to work. And there's evidence that it is working. Hamas still exists. The Gaza Strip is like Tijuana. If Tijuana invaded us, and for 2 years we've been bombing the hell out of them, saying we're going to get these narco-terrorists out, and they're stronger today than they were 2 years ago. And that's just one front. But the Hamas isn't doing that. It's because China, Russia have exquisite intel and funneling lines of communication through Egypt to train and equip them that they're stronger than they were 2 years ago, if you can believe that. How about the industrial base? That's a key factor we talked about with the previous wars. Who's going to win this thing? In the last 20 years, China's built 30,000 miles of high-speed bullet trains. They passed Japan. They have the world's fastest infrastructure. They have 49 trains that go from Beijing to Shanghai every day for $20. You can go 600 miles. Every 30 minutes, there's another train departing. And here's America. We got Amtrak from the 1950s, chunk-a-lumping along at 50 miles an hour. If you want to go from here to San Francisco, you got to get off halfway there and get on a bus. And maybe by the end of the day, you'll get there. It's off the chart comparison. And not only are Americans waking up to this, but the world is ahead of us. The world sees this and is making a decision who they want to work with in the future going forward. These guys have a lot to. They're building these things all over Africa and Southeast Asia, and they call it the Global South. It's incredible. We've spent billions of dollars and we don't have 1 mile of operational track. That's how atrocious our current government is. I have a few thoughts at the end. Yeah. Don't jump ahead. Don't jump ahead. It is a serious problem. Education, America used to be number one in the world. Nobody had a higher literacy rate or education rate than us. And now we're about dead last of the 50 industrialized countries. Here we are number 3 as far as STEM, actual majors that have value for society or high level, science, technology, engineering. 5 of the top 6 are all members of the BRICS right now, graduating over 700 million engineers, scientists a year. We're at about 800,000. And by the way, a big percentage of those are from China and India. Not good. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but Rosalind, you getting this? Okay. I'm sorry, can you stay longer? It's 8 o'clock. All right. Rosalind's our bocce buddy that came over to look at politics a little bit. Thanks again for coming. Thanks everybody for coming. I hope you're getting something out of it. I'll try to speed up a little bit too, because I want to hear some thoughts from the audience for sure. Power. We signed that Paris Accord that said we're going to cut our output of CO2 by 25%. CO2 is the raw food for plant life. It's our food supply. I mean, we don't have time to get into the details, but it's a massive mind scam to harm us and create scarcity and give these small handful of people power. While China agreed to produce as much as they want until 2030, this line is China. They went from almost insignificant on the chart to the number 1 producer, more than twice as much as America with their electrical infrastructure grid. Pretty mind-boggling. All right, so we looked at some of the specifics. Who's going to win this war? In my opinion, the BRICS already won it. It's pretty much over. It's a matter of how much more bloodshed and chaos and mayhem the guys that have given up the baton are going to cause. The green are the existing full members of BRICS. The pink are all other countries that have requested membership. North America, South America, most of Africa. They got Saudi Arabia and Egypt in. I think that's Turkey right there. It's they have all the momentum and all, it's all going that direction. So I think they already won it. When did they win it? In my opinion, August 15, 4 years ago, when we pulled out of Afghanistan and left $80 billion of our top military equipment, gave up Bagram Air Force Base, and ran home with our tail between our legs, and these guys captured all of it. Man, there's some great stories about that too, specifics of how that went down, with Blinken going on talk shows about the Taliban coming back to power, which they basically did in 2 days. They rolled into Kabul and took over on a Sunday. But so here we are. Basically the 500-year rule of the European powers has been superseded heavily by this new money. But if you believe their websites and sub-organizations, they want a system not like the UN where any 1 of 5 countries can negate any kind of progress, which is the case now. They want a multipolar world. You've probably heard the expression a unipolar world or a multipolar world. They want every nation to have equal representation and create a new global governance system that sounds good on paper. Of course, communism did too. So we could be jumping out of the pot and into the fire, but I think these guys, whether you like it or not, these guys are in a position of strength for sure. Okay, some other thoughts on assessment, and then we'll wrap it up. We're all on the front line. Wuhan lab that caused that chaos in 2020, that was one lab. Victoria Nuland and her strategists had 46 of them all across Ukraine. DNA, biological manipulation, that's a very powerful weapon that a lot of people want to get control of, but usually humans, unfortunately, use it for nefarious reasons before they do good with it. We're all in the front line. That whole border crisis, we still have a lot of cleanup to do, although thank God Trump got elected last year and Tom Homan is getting the work done, not just on the street, rounding up these hardened criminals, but they have a program for self-deportation. There's several articles that just like they had an app of how to get to America, you say you're in fear for your life, you'll get a hotel, plane ride, and the way they ran that scam of bringing up 10,000 people a day. They have an app that they'll pay for their fare, and other logistics if they just go back to their country of origin. And I've heard upwards of 2 million of them have already left voluntarily without any, sorry, what's that, Ben?
Good number.
Yeah, and learn about it. Okay, this is the founder's intent. The 3 legs of the government, won't go into it, but basically foreign nations and interests, we have a State Department where they're supposed to liaison. These people are supposed to represent us, we the people. That's the critical connection of comm lines for all of this to work. Sounds simple and easy to do, right? Unfortunately, this is what reality is. They've passed laws making it legal for these NGOs and fictitious entities and other interests to massively control our Congress so that they're bidding their work instead of our work. China's involved in that too. I mentioned before the show. We're sending $300 billion over there to buy windmills. They're laughing off their chairs while they're building coal plants, natural gas, nuclear plants, and we're putting windmills up all over the country. And by the way, we buy all the blades and the motors from China. They're raking in hundreds of billions of dollars while they're collapsing our critical infrastructure. What kind of chips are in there, do you imagine? You could probably turn them all off remotely anyway if they wanted to. Not just the windmills wouldn't matter much, but other infrastructure, China's playing hardball. You know, they got smacked around a lot by Europe for hundreds of years, and they're about done with it. On that subject, last week, 250 of our congressmen that are supposed to be representing us were over in Israel under the Star of David, meeting with Netanyahu and other guys to get their marching orders about what kind of legislation they need to pass, what they need to say to their constituents. You know, young Kim told me how important it was that we support Ukraine. Oh yeah, we have to give them $350 billion a year. It really makes sense. You know, $350 billion, that's $1,000 for every man, woman, and child, and we don't have the money. We're borrowing it from China and Japan and Saudi Arabia, so your kids have to pay back 3 times that amount. It's insane. And whether you support Israel or not, you should be outraged that these people that you hired to represent our interests are over there representing somebody else's interests, or have a higher priority for foreign nations. I wouldn't be upset if we revoked all of their passports and made them stay there. Don't let them back in the country. Mentioned this already, that we had a massive psychological operation and an economic and financial operation. Under Biden, they were bringing 10,000 people a day across our border, and they told us, oh, but we need a massive new bill to hire more judges and lawyers to deal with the situation. Of course, Trump got in on day one and basically shut the valve. It was our own money funding hundreds of billions of dollars to these NGOs to process and make all this happen. Once we shut that valve, when we got the American people's hands on this valve instead of the globalists, we now have 0 illegal crossings a day. The whole charade has been shut down. But we lived under that tyranny for 4 years. You had to turn on your TV and see this crap happening, not only hurting us, but hurting these people too. They had rape trees and bribery. They were treated horribly dangerous to cross the Darien Gap and make their way up, totally out of international norms. It was insane. We were living under truly insane times. We still are, but there's a lot of cleanup to do. But I think things are moving in the right direction. Although a deep-rooted problem, not only $37 trillion debt we can't get out of, but you add up all the states in the trillions, counties in the trillions, cities in the trillions, your home mortgages. Everybody know mortgage is Latin for death grip. You know, bankers make you come beg for a mortgage, and then they got you by the short hairs for the next 30 years. If you miss a payment, they'll kick you and your family out of your own house. Not an ideal situation. Then they said, oh, you don't want to buy a house after the collapse? Well, you're going to take student loans out. You're going to owe as much as a mortgage, and instead of a house, we're just going to give you a piece of paper. Deal with that. You wonder why so many young kids today are depressed and unable to deal with life in a healthy way? Add all Although in the past, Lincoln tried to make a greenback during the war that was interest-free money. His head got blown off. JFK tried a $5 silver coin printed by the Treasury without the Fed involved. Got his head blown off. So it's not going to be easy to kill this snake. But I think it's happening. There's a lot of progress being made. And that's the main thing we need to do. Easier said than done. But personally, in summary of looking at all that information, we were meant to live free and brave and happy.
Amen.
And that affects your DNA, it affects your blood pressure, it affects your life, your existence. Our founding fathers knew that. We want liberty and happiness, an unalienable right to that pursuit. But we've been living under some truly evil people with some terrible stories to tell us, and they need to be shut down as quickly as possible. So if I were the boss, I would ditch the Fed tomorrow and join the BRICS. So with that, looking forward though, for each individual, don't let this consume your life. Because it is important, there is danger there, you need to ask questions, but you have to keep it in balance and understand there's only so much we can do. What's that, the Serenity Prayer? Do what you can, but if you can't do it, know the wisdom between the two. So basically I'd suggest take care of yourself, take care of your family and friends, as we're all experts of doing here in Laguna Woods, but do question everything. A lot of propaganda is still rampant. And then if you're up for it, seek the truth and try to share it. But as far as our country, and with just the last couple slides wrapping up, number one to me is restoring the integrity of our republic by the Federal Election Commission tomorrow could say that any campaign can only take funds from individuals in the district they want to represent. That'll clean up a whole lot of this mess. They have to come and respect us and Citizens United said, well, money is speech, so you can do whatever you want with it. Yeah, no, it's speech though, but if they're supposed to represent us, the money has to flow that way too. Otherwise, you compromise the system. Once they take $1 from someplace outside the district, their integrity is compromised. They're not doing their job. And then the other, of course, the media monopoly, when they tell us, that internet thing is a threat to democracy, and it's on every channel every day for days. Or Putin invaded totally unprovoked, every channel, all day long, every day. But what's the good news here? So we could easily break up the media monopoly that they've been using on us for decades. But in my opinion, Trump and the way Trump calls them, just today at the press conference, he said to CNN, I'm not talking to you, you're fake news. They were using that on the internet, people. The trusted sources would say, oh, don't look at the internet, that's fake news. Trump got in office and flipped it on him at the press conference with that guy from CNN and said, sit down, you're fake news. He's been educating the world about that ever since. And then, of course, Elon Musk being able to buy X and open that up has been invaluable, really, to at least have a chance of getting the real information of what's going on. So I'm not too concerned on this one. But then printing our own money, ending the Federal Reserve, living in a debt-free society, and having a financial architecture that makes sense for the people is critical. We could pay them off. We could print $40 trillion of Federal Reserve notes tomorrow, give it to them and say, there you go, sirs, you're all paid off. And now we're going to start printing US dollars backed by the American people. That's the key thing. Easier said than done, but I think until we get this done, we're going to be at risk. Okay, so hopefully you got something of use out of it. Thanks again for your time. Rosalind, I'm so glad you stayed till 1:15.